It's essentially a collection of pieces of Unistrut. You can buy Unistrut and things like that from Lowe's and Home Depot and places of that nature and cut it up yourself, but I got this on sale for about 120 bucks, and right now a 10-piece chunk of Unistrut is over $30 at Home Depot or Lowe's. And you don't have all the extra brackets like the feet, which are like another 30 bucks or so online, and the connectors, which are about 10 bucks a pop. Never mind the mid clamps and end clamps and all the other hardware that they include. I'm actually going to be putting on 4 200-watt panels that I have ordered. To get this to be wide enough though, the default width is 114 inches. I bought two 2-foot sections of Unistrut up there that I'm going to add on to this setup, because one of the advantages of this is that it is based on standard Unistrut and not some custom one-off deal. So you can actually connect these together easily, or you can modify them with easily available components. The brackets come pre-installed for the legs of the unit, so you don't have to worry about putting those bolts in yourself. And then these long pieces here are the horizontal pieces that you connect together using these connectors with the 4 bolts, so that you get one long string of Unistrut. That way they can ship it in a smaller box rather than trying to ship a 10-foot chunk of Unistrut. These 4 pieces are the legs, the short ones are the front legs, and of course the long ones are the back legs. Also included are these special flange nuts that you slide into the channels of the strut to secure the vertical pieces to the horizontal pieces. You got a collection of mid clamps here as well, and a collection of side clamps for the panels, and red end caps for the individual pieces of strut so that you don't have bare ends poking people. You also get the clamps to hold the pieces of strut together for the horizontal run. You get 4 galvanized feet, some very basic tools that'll probably do the job, but if you have other ones I'd recommend it. Some expansion bolts for if you want to drill this and secure it to concrete, and some miscellaneous hardware to connect all the pieces together. I'm going to start by connecting the horizontal pieces together to make 2 long pieces. These are the brackets that I bought to connect the 2-foot pieces that I'm going to add to the parts that come with the kit. These have magnets in them to serve for easier assembly, so I was going to check and see if this hardware is stainless. I don't think it is. Yeah, definitely not stainless hardware. So far the easiest way I've found to do this is to string it across my kitchen using chairs and whatever else I can find to prop it up to make it level. It's probably a good thing I'm not married anymore, because boy, my ex-wife would be pissed. Well, that's pretty long. That's what she said. The factory length is 114 inches. I added 24 inches for a total of 138. That should be enough for 4 of the 33-inch wide panels that I have on order that should be delivered tomorrow. Well, it's actually 142 inches overall length, not 138, so someone lied about their length. That never happens. Got the legs assembled. I do wish they had some kind of spacers on these so that you could tighten down the bolts better without crushing the tube, but it'll work. The washers are serrated at least, so they shouldn't come loose very easily. The welds, as you would expect, are pretty scabby, but hey, I don't think anything short of a tornado is going to break those off anyway. These are the panels that I'm going to put onto the eco-worthy rack. Got 4 of them for $603 shipped. They're bifacial, 200 watt, and they are 54 inches tall by 30 inches wide. So they should fit that rack pretty well. According to eco-worthy, you could put a residential panel on that rack, but based on the height of a standard residential panel, I don't know if I'd want to go taller than this with that rack. These are called flange nuts. You just take them, they have a notch side there. You drop them into the channel and twist. And then the metal tab locks in to the channel itself and won't come back out again. That way you can secure whatever you want to the actual strut channel itself. Alright, got those in. EcoWorthy says to position them about 28 to 30 inches from the end of the strut for optimal stability, so I'm going to go ahead and do so. And I got the crossbars bolted in. I'm putting the legs on now. I got the cross pieces bolted together, and I'm putting the front legs on. I'm going to do the back legs next. It's all assembled. Still need to do additional work here. I need to get some 4x4s, 8-footers I think, and put 4x4s parallel with the long rails, and then some 2x4s running underneath these legs from front to back here just to stabilize the whole thing. It's a little wobbly right now, but it's designed to be bolted into concrete. And I'm not going to bolt it into my patio facing north. So I have two 4x4s and a 2x6. I'm going to go ahead and use those as the platform to sit it on so that I can move it around relatively easily rather than trying to pour a concrete slab and never move it ever again. Plus, I don't want to mess up my backyard that much. To that end, I also have some 8-inch pneumatic casters I got from Harbor Freight. Those are about 15 bucks a pop. That way I can roll it around my backyard anywhere I want, depending on the season and where I want it to be. I only have 1/3 of an acre, and I have a relatively nice backyard, so I don't really have a place to put a giant fixed array like a lot of people do. This is going to be the basic structure of what's going to support the rack. I got two 8-inch casters. They're going to be on the other side of this though, so imagine the caster being on the opposite side of that board here. I went with a little bit wider of a stance because I had the wood for it, and I figured it would give the array a bit more stability. And because these center supports have to be on 28 inches on center to fit the legs of the rack itself. So next I'm going to drill the holes for the bolts that will support the casters, and then I will screw the whole thing together using deck screws. I have the holes drilled for the casters, and now I'm just going to secure the whole thing together with 4-inch deck screws. Got it all screwed together with 5 4-inch deck screws each, so that should be plenty. I should mention the reason why I went with 4x4s rather than just more 2x6s is mostly for height. I wanted to get this off the ground as much as I could without sacrificing stability, because I have to deal with snow, so I want some place for the snow to slide off the panels rather than just piling up the base and making me have to shovel every 5 seconds. So that's why I'm going so tall. You don't have to use 4x4s if you don't have to deal with snow. Well, I'm running out of daylight, but I got the wheels all mounted, so I just need to flip it over and mount that on top of it. I have discovered a flaw in my plan, so I'm going to add another 2x6 across the end here so I can get more than just one fastener holding down each end of the rack. Alright, got the extra wood screwed in using 4 more 4-inch deck screws. So that'll make it a bit stronger, I think, and will give me an extra 1.5 inches of height, and that'll be a good thing. I'm using a combination of 3/8 inch lag bolts and normal bolts, depending on what material I'm going into, to secure the rack to the base. Well, the rack is done. It's pretty sturdy, and it's heavy enough I don't think it's going to get blown over or anything like that, at least not easily. A note on this is that you definitely do need to secure the legs to a solid surface of some kind, because if you do not, the legs are way too wobbly to support itself. So again, it has to be secured to something, even if it's just a couple of 2x4s squared up to each other while sitting on the ground. Well, according to my math, I need to be about 9¼ inches in from the edges for this to line up across the entire face of the array. So we're going to see how well I can do this by myself. It's very important to make sure that your first panel is squared up, otherwise the rest of the panels down the line are going to be also out of square. So I would suggest getting some kind of square to make sure that you get this correct the first time through. Annoyingly, when the clamps fall over the bolts, you can't get them very close, so you end up with that. So now I have to rearrange my entire array to work around this shortcoming. So when you're measuring out your panels, make sure that none of the joint between panels falls on any of these bolts, otherwise you will have a bad time like I am having currently. Well, it's the next day. I ended up having to take it all apart again and start over, just so I can make sure that I could handle the joint in between the pieces here, because if the clamp falls on those bolts, it will not slide left or right. So you have to actually change the alignment of the panel to make sure that it fits, so the actual captive bolts here do not hit the bolts that are holding the pieces together. If I had to do this over again, I probably would just go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy 2 10-foot chunks of this stuff, so it's one continuous piece, and just put 2 2-foot extensions on the end or something like that, because I'm not a real big fan of these individual pieces bolted together setup. It does make for cheaper shipping, but for practical reasons, it's a real pain in the neck. Also beware of these little plastic tabs. You got to make sure that they go underneath the panel before you try to put things together, otherwise it'll jam everything up and make everything cockeyed. So make sure those little plastic tabs go under the panel before you try to tighten down these bolts. I got it all together here other than the wiring. It does go pretty quickly once you get the first panel aligned, and if you don't have to deal with bolt interference that I was talking about here a few seconds ago. But it did go together pretty well. I had some misgivings about maybe putting some residential size panels on this, even though the manufacturer says you can. But when it's this high off the ground, I think you could do residential panels here rather than these 200-watt smaller panels that I have here. But this will suit my purposes fine. I probably could have fit 3 residential panels on here with the extensions. I might have had to do another 24-inch extension on the ends. If I did that, I probably would have wanted to put a center support in the middle of that run, in the middle of the panels, because I think it'd be too flimsy with that extra length. But overall, not too bad, especially for the price that I paid for it. I did forget about these red end caps and didn't put it on until now, but in hindsight, I would put those little red caps on before you put the panels on, because I did have an issue with being worried about the back of the panels getting scratched by the metal, and I think the plastic caps would have helped prevent that. It's not that big of a deal on these bifacials, but if you have a standard vinyl backing, if you scratch that up, you're in a lot of trouble. So definitely put these little caps on before you put the panels on, unlike what I did. I don't know if you can see it on camera or not, but there's definitely a bit of a bow in this. So it's definitely, I think it really needs this third leg, to be honest with you. Considering the span is 8 feet, Oh well, project for another day. I think the wheels were actually a really good idea because this thing rolls even over grass really easily with the 8-inch casters that I have on there right now. As you can tell, the panels are definitely bifacial. And this is how you solve the sagging problem in the most redneck, cheapest way possible. That way you don't have to worry about snow load collapsing your solar array. It'll work for now. I would say that I definitely would add a middle leg to this setup if you were going to do this with extensions like I did, because trust me, it is too much sag in the middle. It's pretty obvious. So I would actually do a bit more work here. You could just use wood and just make sure you screw it in with some brackets, or you could even buy some channel like that and fashion your own middle leg here. I would do it before you put the panels on though, because otherwise it becomes a real pain in the neck. So, but we'll see. The winter's setting in here, so everything's covered in frost in the morning and even in the evening here, as you can probably see on the grass over there. So production's down quite a bit. Well, the angle is a little bit more shallow than I'd hoped for. Not exactly winter optimal, but it'll have to do. The only way to change the angle on this is to drill different holes, apparently. So I guess it kind of depends on where you put it, but it's about between 25 and 28 degrees. So a quick list of pros and cons here on this setup. Cons to begin with, we have the flimsiness issues. It is pretty flimsy, especially before you bolt it down to a solid structure. My biggest complaint is the flimsiness on the horizontal bows here, because I had to, of course, add a third leg. Do note that I did extend the length of the horizontal bows by 24 inches, so that probably did not help matters. That is not EcoWorthy's fault. That is my fault. Another annoyance was having to work around the connector bolts and brackets that hold the horizontal strings together. That was a real pain, for me at least, because of course all of my clamps ended up right over those bolts, and I had to work around that and take it all apart, put it back together to get it to work properly. There is also the matter of limited adjustability. EcoWorthy listed as 30 to 45 degrees. That means in the summertime you're probably going to be giving up some power, even if you do manually adjust it. And to manually adjust it, you do have to take apart bolts on the legs and move the physical legs around on the bracket assembly. So overall, for the price that I paid for it, again, not complaining too much. That comes to the pros. The pros are that when on sale, this is a fairly good deal. I got it as low as $120. I've seen it between $120 and $160. I think for $120 to $130 it's a good deal. $160 and not so much. Do make sure that if you decide to buy this, that you cross-shop Amazon as well as eBay and also EcoWorthy's website, because their prices are different on each and they have different sales on each site. And some sites charge sales tax and some do not. So make sure you cross-shop. Another pro is that it is compatible with smaller panels. If I wanted to put my 100-watt panels on this, I could. For something like an EG4 Bright Mat or something like that, I probably could not. It also has easy expandability because it's made out of standardized parts using standard strut that you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's. Another pro is that it's easy to attach a solid structure by building a frame out of pressure-treated wood that you can get from Home Depot or Lowe's. Each of those 4x4s is under $14, and the 2x6s were about $12 each. So just in wood, I'd probably about $60. And the wheels are about $65 from Harbor Freight. And of course, all the miscellaneous bolts I had to buy, that's probably another $30 or so in hardware. So not too expensive for what you get. I still do need to ground the array. I have not done that yet. I have the clips that I installed on the panels before I installed them, but I haven't tied it to a ground rod yet. That is something you want to do, especially with the EG4 6500EX, because there is a slight voltage that comes back through the MPPT to the array. So you can actually have a little bit of a zappy situation going on if you don't watch it, if you don't ground your array properly. If I was going to do it again, I would consider buying 10-foot sticks of the strut material from Home Depot or Lowe's. The downside of that is it is very expensive. It's about $40 right now for each stick, so that's $80 on top of the cost of $120 to buy the actual original setup from EcoWorthy, so not very cost effective, but it's an option. Cheaper option would be to add a third leg, which I would suggest doing either way, especially if you have heavy panels like I do. They're bifacial, so they're a bit heavier. You may also consider buying 10-inch wheels because they're not that much more expensive than the 8-inch wheels that I purchased. It would give you a bit more ground clearance and work better over rougher ground if you aren't just rolling over grass like I am. Overall, I would give this a 4 out of 5 star review. In fact, I'm probably going to post that to Amazon. I think it could be a 5-star product if it was a little bit sturdier, or if they included another set of legs to support the middle of the array. Again, if you buy it for $120 to $130, that's a pretty good deal considering the cost of materials right now. But again, I wouldn't buy it when it's at the normal price of like $165 to $170. Well, this wraps up another video. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for more.